Hi everyone, I'm Julian. Bring your curiosity and welcome back to the Curious Table. Today, we're going to dive into some fascinating stories about Florence. To make things even more interesting, we're joined by 4 experts: Adrian, Helena, Oliver, and Miles. Alright, let's put together the first piece of the puzzle we have on the table. When it comes to Florence, you simply can't leave out its magnificent red dome, the Duomo, right?
Exactly. Most people just see the dome as a beautiful landmark. But the truth is, long after the main cathedral was finished, the roof sat wide open for a very long time. The technology back then simply couldn't handle it. It was Florence's massive unsolved puzzle, essentially a glaring monument to the impossible.
Hold on, impossible. It's the absolute pride of Florence today, so to think the centerpiece was just missing for that long. What kind of massive roadblock did they run into?
For starters, the gap they had to span was well over 45 meters across. With the technology they had back then, building a dome meant first constructing a massive wooden support structure, called centering, to completely fill that enormous space. But building a framework of that magnitude wasn't just an issue of a timber shortage. Even if they somehow managed to get their hands on enough wood, a structure that massive was bound to collapse under its own weight, let alone the weight of the dome.
Exactly. That technical hurdle went way beyond a simple architectural problem. It was like an open wound for the city that Florentines had to face every single day. Their bitter rival, Milan, was already flaunting its massive, completed cathedral, while the very heart of Florence sat unfinished for decades. The pride of the entire city was on the line.
So it wasn't just a building, it was a massive scar on the city's pride. Then who exactly stepped up, and what kind of groundbreaking solution did they use to finally complete this massive puzzle, bridging the technological limits of the time and the desperate hopes of the citizens?
That's when a genius named Filippo Brunelleschi stepped in and completely changed the game. He proposed a solution that defied the conventional wisdom of the time. He would build the dome over that massive void using nothing but bricks, without a single piece of internal scaffolding. Something everyone else believed was absolutely impossible.
Wait a minute, no internal scaffolding, just bricks? That throws every architectural rule of the time right out the window. It sounds like a direct challenge to gravity itself. Didn't people back then write him off as the con artist of the century, rather than a savior?
Exactly. That's why Brunelleschi's solution wasn't just a single magic trick. He wove several groundbreaking ideas together into one cohesive system. The foundational concept was the double-shell dome, building 2 layers instead of 1, to drastically cut down on the weight. Combine that with a series of highly sophisticated techniques, like the herringbone brick pattern, where bricks are laid in a fishbone shape, so they support their own weight without collapsing. And that's how he managed to pull off the impossible.
So that herringbone pattern was one of those solutions. You mean instead of just stacking the bricks, he interlocked them, to act like a giant chain that distributes the weight on its own? He really engineered an entire system, just to solve a single problem.
Spot on. He designed it so that every single brick interlocked, almost like the skeleton of a massive living organism. If you just stack bricks horizontally, they can't withstand the inward pull of gravity. But by wedging vertical bricks into the pattern, each layer essentially became a giant, self-locking ring. Thanks to this technique, the dome could support itself as it rose, completely eliminating the need for a massive internal support structure, which would have been impossible to build with the technology of the time anyway.
And that's exactly what makes this dome so much more than just a building. It's a testament to the spirit of the times. Just picture it, moving away from an era that relied entirely on divine authority. A single human being used meticulous logic and sheer ingenuity to finally conquer the sky, achieving the impossible. It was the most magnificent declaration of the dawn of the Renaissance, written in stone and brick.
Wow, so it wasn't just about finishing a dome, it was a massive manifesto, declaring that human reason was ushering in a whole new era. But it seems like the face of Florence isn't solely defined by this yearning for the heavens. Down in the narrow alleys, you've got these massive fortress-like mansions, the palazzos standing their ground. If the soaring Duomo was a story about God and the public, whose power and ambition are reflected in those solid, grounded buildings.
You're exactly right, Julian. If the soaring Duomo was a public stage, embodying the ideals of the Florentine Republic, those firmly grounded palazzos were more like private fortresses for powerful families like the Medicis. Just take a look at those deliberately rough-hewn exterior walls, a style known as rustication. They were more than just defensive barriers. They were essentially a visible armor of power, boldly declaring, "Don't even think about challenging our wealth and authority."
That exact contrast is the true magic of Renaissance architecture. The fortress-like facade was really just a theatrical backdrop, a sort of mask. The moment you push past those massive doors and step into the inner courtyard, the cortile, the chaos of the outside world just fades away. Inside, you're met with a world of light and order, a perfectly calculated realm of harmony and proportion designed around the human scale. It was essentially the family's own ideal microcosm.
Wow, an imposing fortress to guard their power on the outside, and a perfect human-centered microcosm on the inside. That goes way beyond just a simple contrast between a building's interior and exterior. It's as if the very psychology of the era's power players was built right into the architecture. The tough public face they needed to rule over a chaotic world, and their private yearning for order and harmony.
Exactly. And that stark divide between those two faces is what often drenched this city's history in blood. Behind the brilliant facade of the Renaissance patron lurked cold-blooded rulers who would ruthlessly purge their political rivals and parade the consequences for all to see.
Wait, you mean they executed their political rivals and actually hung them up for everyone to see? That's absolutely shocking. What on earth could have driven such a sophisticated family of Renaissance art patrons to stage such a public spectacle of revenge?
That would be the Pazzi conspiracy, which goes down as the most audacious and brutal plot in Florentine history. Backed by the Pope, the rival Pazzi family targeted Lorenzo and his brother Giuliano right inside the Duomo, the very heart of the city. And they made their move at the exact moment the most sacred Easter Mass was underway.
Wait, inside the Duomo, and right in the middle of the most sacred Easter Mass, that goes way beyond a simple assassination attempt. It's practically a direct attack on the very faith and symbol of Florence itself.
Exactly, that was the whole point of the plot. By spilling blood in the Duomo, the very heart of Florence, during the holiest moment of the Mass, they intended to shatter not just the Medici's authority, but the faith of the entire city to its core. In fact, the signal for the attack was the exact moment the priest elevated the host, and his younger brother, Giuliano, was killed instantly.
So his brother was killed on the spot, but what about Lorenzo? What happened to the real target of this entire conspiracy?
Miraculously, Lorenzo survived. He escaped, with nothing more than a graze to his neck. Amidst the chaos, he managed to barricade himself inside the sacristy. But ironically, his survival became the catalyst that plunged Florence into an even greater spiral of revenge.
An even greater spiral of revenge. So that must be when they hung the conspirators' bodies from the windows of City Hall, like you mentioned earlier. How did the people of Florence react to seeing their most sacred space drenched in blood?
That was the Pazzi family's greatest miscalculation. They completely underestimated how horrified the Florentines would be by such sacrilege. Instead, the furious mob chanted the Medici rallying cry, "Palle! Palle!" and dragged the ringleaders out into the streets to take justice into their own hands.
Pow, pow. So they were chanting the word for balls, the symbol of the Medici family. It sounds like the citizens really took matters into their own hands. Then was the symbolic climax of that gruesome revenge, the sight of those bodies hanging from the windows of City Hall.
Exactly. The ringleaders, and even the archbishop involved in the plot, paid the ultimate price through public execution. But Lorenzo's revenge didn't stop there. Famously, he commissioned Botticelli to paint the executed conspirators and displayed the artwork on the walls of City Hall to serve as an eternal warning. It was a moment when the most beautiful art was transformed into the most brutal political message.
It's honestly chilling that beautiful art was used as such a terrifying political warning. From now on, whenever I look at Florentine art, I'll be thinking about the dark history of power, hidden beneath the surface. Alright, so we've put together the first piece of the puzzle, the city's monumental architecture and the bloody history that unfolded within it. Now for the second piece, as travelers stepping onto this grand stage, what should we see and taste to truly experience the authentic heart of Florence?
That's exactly where to start. When most travelers arrive in Florence, they immediately hit their first hurdle, feeling completely overwhelmed by the massive crowds. So my first piece of advice is to shift your perspective a bit. If you want to experience the true beauty of the Duomo, the city's most iconic symbol, ironically enough, climbing straight to the top isn't always the best approach.
Wow, that's actually pretty surprising. Looking out over the city from the cupola is usually considered the absolute highlight of a trip to Florence. Are you saying there's a better way to experience it than climbing straight up its most iconic landmark?
There's actually a really interesting paradox there. If you climb to the very top to get the best view of the main attraction, that iconic red dome, the star of the show completely disappears from your sight. It's like going to a theater to see your favorite actor perform, only to end up standing right next to them on stage.
Ah, I see. So you need to be out in the audience to actually see the star of the show. In that case, where is the best seat in the house to truly appreciate the main attraction?
If I had to pick the absolute best seat in the house, I'd say without hesitation, it's Giotto's bell tower, standing right next door like its perfect companion. From up there, you can take in everything, from every single red tile on the dome to the sweeping curves of that massive structure so vividly, it feels like you could just reach out and touch it.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. Stepping back into the audience to truly see the star of the show, while everyone is so focused on climbing to the top of the dome. Such an incredible vantage point was hiding right next door. So, besides the bell tower, are there any other hidden gems where we can take in the dome's beauty from a different angle?
Absolutely. How about I let you in on another prime spot, but this time with a completely different, much more relaxing vibe. You should check out the rooftop cafe at the Rinascente department store in Piazza della Repubblica. Instead of sweating your way up countless stairs, you can sit back with a coffee and take in the Duomo's profile almost at eye level. It's a completely different kind of breathtaking experience.
Wow, getting to have such a special experience over just a cup of coffee is pure gold. It really goes to show that sticking to the usual tourist path isn't the only way to go. Just shifting your perspective a little can make your experience of the city so much richer and more dynamic. So, taking it a step further than just changing our vantage point, what if we want to escape the crowds altogether? Are there any spots off the beaten path where we can discover a completely different side of Florence?
Absolutely. Just hop across one of the bridges. If the north side of the Arno River is Florence's glamorous, picture-perfect face, the Oltrarno neighborhood across the water is where you can really feel the authentic, everyday heartbeat of the city.
Oltrarno, even the name has a totally different ring to it. Being across the river, honestly, I just pictured it as a quiet residential neighborhood, tucked away from the tourist noise. But to hear it called the real heartbeat of Florence means it must hold some incredible charm. What kind of stories are hiding over there?
If Piazza del Duomo is the dazzling facade of a museum, the Oltrarno is the beating heart, where all that art actually comes to life. The second you wander into those alleys, you're hit with the constant sound of hammers pounding leather and the rich scent of freshly carved wood. That's where the bottegas, the traditional artisan workshops that nurtured the Renaissance masters, are still alive and thriving centuries later.
Living, breathing workshops, that sounds absolutely fascinating. So it's not just history frozen in time, but a heart that's still beating today. That brings me to you, Oliver. How is the food different when it has to satisfy the demanding palates of these artisans?
You've hit the nail on the head, Julian. At the end of the day, an artisan's workbench and a great chef's kitchen speak the exact same language. Whether you're working with leather or meat, It's all about honestly bringing out the true essence of your materials and letting their quality speak for itself. That deep-rooted authenticity, something you just can't fake in a tourist trap, is what gives the food in that neighborhood its true flavor.
Honestly bringing out the true essence of your materials, that sounds like the core philosophy of Florentine cuisine. So what about the city's pride and joy? Bistecca alla Fiorentina is that famous stubbornness of never asking how you want your steak cooked, just another expression of that honesty, the chef's way of personally showcasing the ingredient at its absolute peak.
Spot on. Refusing to ask how you want it cooked isn't arrogance, it's a profound respect for the meat's true value, and a testament to our pride. Instead of asking, how would you like your steak? We believe there is only one single, perfect moment, when that cut of meat truly shines.
Wow, what exactly does that single, perfect moment look like? So, would it be fair to say it's an uncompromising philosophy that prioritizes the absolute peak of the ingredient over the customer's personal preference?
Exactly. It's more than just a rule. It's practically a law of physics, designed to unlock the meat's full potential. A proper Fiorentina starts with a cut that's well over 3 fingers thick. That sheer thickness is the only way to get that perfect, crispy char on the outside, over hot oak coals, while keeping the inside beautifully rare and juicy. That's why asking for it well done isn't a culinary choice to us. It's viewed as destroying the value of a premium ingredient.
Wow, that uncompromising dedication to protecting the ingredient's integrity truly feels like an artisan's conviction. Tell me, are there any other dishes in Florence that, much like this steak, hold a hidden clue where just looking at the outside lets you gauge the true value within?
Absolutely. There's actually a fascinating visual cue waiting for tourists, and I'm talking about gelato. You've probably seen it before. Those flashy, mountain-high mounds of gelato, with fruit garnishes sticking out of them. Ironically, that over-the-top presentation is often a massive red flag when it comes to quality. Authentic, high-quality gelato is dense and has very little air whipped into it, making it physically impossible to hold that towering shape on its own. Seeing it piled that high is basically a visual giveaway that it's been pumped full of extra air or artificial stabilizers.
Ah, so a flashy presentation can actually be a warning sign. Then, amidst all those visual temptations, where exactly are the hidden clues to finding that true, authentic flavor?
Ironically, the best clue actually lies in keeping things hidden. Instead of being piled up in flashy displays, truly exceptional gelato is often stored out of sight, in metal tubs called pizzetti, covered with stainless steel lids to maintain the perfect temperature. It's a true testament to the artisan's confidence, letting the flavor speak entirely for itself, rather than relying on looks.
So, the true value of the Duomo is only revealed when you take a step back, and the absolute best gelato is actually kept hidden from plain sight. It seems like traveling through Florence is really a journey of developing an eye for authenticity, learning to look past the superficial glamour to find the true essence within. Now, I can't wait to see what kind of grand picture all these puzzle pieces we've been putting together will finally reveal.
That's exactly where all the pieces come together. The moment you stand on a hillside in Florence, or climb Giotto's bell tower to face Brunelleschi's dome, you can truly grasp the relentless drive of a genius who defied impossible engineering to bridge that massive void, intertwined with the ambition of the Medici family that backed him. Then, you cross the river to a small restaurant, witness a chef's uncompromising stubbornness over how a steak is cooked, and it suddenly hits you. You realize, that exact same unwavering resolve is deeply connected to the very spirit of Florence that raised that dome centuries ago.
It really feels like all the scattered puzzle pieces are finally coming together. In the end, a journey through Florence is really about discovering that enduring Renaissance spirit, a powerful current that flows through the ages, connecting everything from an architect's blueprint right down to a chef's plate.
Exactly. At first, everything just feels like isolated sensations. The sight of the dome before you, the taste of the steak on your tongue. But the moment you discover that common thread, connecting the architect's relentless drive and the chef's stubborn pride, all those dots finally connect to reveal the grand map of the Renaissance.
In the end, that grand map isn't pieced together in your head, it's finished right on the tip of your tongue. There's a moment when you bite into a piece of steak cooked with zero compromises, and in that bold, unapologetic flavor, you can actually feel that same centuries-old drive that challenged the impossible. And right then, travel stops being just about sightseeing. It becomes a visceral, full-body experience that transports you straight through time.
So, it sounds like all these experiences, starting right from the tip of your tongue, are really about awakening a new perspective that's been lying dormant inside us. A true eye for beauty. It's like the most vivid souvenir you could ever bring back, one that won't fit in your suitcase but stays with you for a lifetime.
And I think a journey only truly comes full circle when that invisible souvenir weaves its way into your everyday life. After standing beneath the near impossibility of Brunelleschi's dome, you suddenly find yourself asking questions about the ordinary neighborhood bridge you used to just walk right past. How does that arch support all that weight? What purpose does that column actually serve? Your eyes are finally opened to the unseen forces and sheer willpower that hold the world together.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly what the Renaissance humanists meant by the art of reading the world. It's the ability to look beyond the written word and read the narratives hidden in stone, in food, and in the expressions on people's faces. In that sense, Florence is like one giant classroom, where you absorb that skill with your entire being.
A giant classroom. I think that's the perfect note to end today's journey on. Today, we started with a single dome, navigated the shadows of political power struggles, and ended up with the taste of gelato on the tip of our tongues. Through it all, we've witnessed how these seemingly scattered pieces weave together into the singular spirit of the Renaissance. It turns out this is the very key to awakening that dormant ability to read the world. Our true eye for beauty. I hope the inspiration we've drawn from Florence serves as a guiding light, transforming your everyday routines into extraordinary narratives. This has been The Curious Table. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps us keep making these videos. Thank you.